Man, I was thinking about you yesterday. I think you probably know this, but I live across the Mississippi River in the state of Illinois, and I literally yelled last night when this news alert came across my phone. This state of Illinois that I live in is a state of disrepair. What do you think about this?
Well, I can't say I'm surprised by what a partisan, democratically elected, Democratic Party, local Cook County judge
It's very specific.
would do. Yeah, I mean, think about the absolute arrogance of this judge who knows that this question is pending before the U.S. Supreme Court, which is so many levels above her, you can't even count them all. And yet she goes ahead and says, well, I don't really care that the Supreme Court is going to decide whether I and other state officials actually have the authority to do this. I'm just going to go ahead and defy the U.S. Supreme Court and take him off the ballot.
So what does she just want her name out there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. Look, she is just like the Secretary of State of Maine, Fannie Willis, the Democratic prosecutor in Atlanta, Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan prosecutor. These are local Democratic party hacks who want to make themselves known nationally to the Democratic Party. And that's what's driving this.
So here's the question. Is the Supreme Court just the ultimate all the way across the board smackdown of this kind of behavior with how, I guess, specifically the ballot question? Do all these people have to sit down and shut up if the Supreme Court comes back and says, you can't take him off the ballot?
I think the Supreme Court is going to issue an opinion that's broad enough to void all of these other cases, including what just happened in Illinois, what happened in Maine, even though those specific parties aren't before the court. Because, look, if they come out, for example, and say Section 3 of the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to Donald Trump, he doesn't fit within the language, well, then what this Illinois judge did is totally and completely invalid.
Just like that. Well, I'm praying that that's the case. Yeah. I want to shift gears here for you a second and talk to you about the immunity case. Here's CNN making this report.
This is a massive development, Jake. The Supreme Court has agreed to take up the issue of whether former President Trump has immunity from the federal election subversion case that he is facing.
So I say this each week, and I'm going to say it again to you. There are so many cases against Donald Trump that the average voter, even the more attentive voter, cannot keep them straight. Can you talk to me about where the immunity conversation comes in with the Trump charges? And then we'll get to what the Supreme Court taking up that case actually could mean down the line.
Sure. This is in the case filed by Special Counsel Jack Smith. So this is a federal case. It's a criminal prosecution of Donald Trump, 4 counts for supposedly defrauding the United States by claiming that he had won the 2020 election. I mean, look, the entire indictment is bogus to start with. Jack Smith is also a very partisan, biased lawyer, as his record has proven. But in essence, President Trump has come in and said, look, you're attempting to criminally prosecute me for actions that I took while I was president, when I was acting as president, and I'm immune from that. And that's an issue that has never been decided. The federal trial court in Washington, D.C., where these charges were filed, that judge ruled against him and said, no, you don't have immunity. It was appealed to the Court of Appeals that covers the District of Columbia. But in the meantime, they haven't actually issued a decision. But in the meantime, Jack Smith actually went directly to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has now said, yeah, we're going to take up the case. And until the Supreme Court makes a decision, the criminal case isn't going to go forward. The judge wanted a trial to start at the end of March, but that isn't going to happen because the Supreme Court has now said we are going to take up this case. And if the Supreme Court comes back and says no, a president is immune from criminal prosecution, that would throw out Jack Smith's entire case.
The entire case.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about the 4 counts of defrauding the United States that surrounds January 6th. Is there specificity that Jack Smith is saying you did this, 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 and this? That's how you defrauded it. I mean, he gave the speech on January 6th. Is that enough that he didn't? What are the specific things that they're saying he did? They're like, that's where the fraud comes in.
Well, the fundamental basis of the claim is Jack Smith saying that when he made those assertions that he had won the race, he actually knew that he hadn't, and that any and all actions he took to talk to state officials and ask them to not certify the results in places like Georgia and elsewhere, and all his conversations with members of Congress telling them that they should object to certification, as they're allowed to do under federal law, all of that was criminal wrongdoing, which is totally ridiculous. All of that activity is protected by the First Amendment, and the president is now saying, like I said, I've got presidential immunity. The important thing for people to know about this is that this is an issue that has never been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court because nobody's ever tried to criminally prosecute a former president for actions that he took while he was president. People have in the past tried to sue former presidents on a civil basis, saying that they were damaged by something a president did, and the Supreme Court on that issue has ruled that presidents are absolutely immune from any kind of civil liability for actions they took while they were president.
Yeah, I'm watching as the cases seem to be developing, and I think it was Megyn Kelly who tweeted this out, but with case after case after case, the developments that are happening, let's add in the Fani Willis situation in Georgia, which I'd like to hear your thoughts on briefly as well, but Donald Trump looks to potentially be drawing the inside straight here, especially on timing, the postponement of the rapid speed with which the people prosecuting him wanted to have this done so it could be done nice and tight and bright before the election takes place, that in many of these cases, things are looking up for Donald Trump.
Well, they are. Certainly in the case involving Fani Willis down in Atlanta, who the testimony has revealed is an unethical liar and should be removed from that case. And here, the federal criminal case, like I said, the judge wanted the case to start, I think it was March 24th. Supreme Court has accepted it and said they'll hear oral arguments on the week of April 22nd.
Ooh.
And they aren't going to issue a decision right after that. It'll take them a while to issue a decision. The latest we would hear from the court with a decision would be June 30th. That's the end of their term. And if they wait until then, we're going to be in the midst of the summer election season and the upcoming national conventions.
So if the Supreme Court rules that immunity does apply to Donald Trump in the defrauding the United States in regards to January 6th case with Jack Smith, those cases are all done, right? They're gone. That's it, because he has immunity.
That is correct. And for those who think, oh, well, a president shouldn't have immunity, well, yeah, he should, because otherwise presidents will be afraid to act and afraid to take actions which could result in criminal prosecution down the road. And the easiest way to think about this is that think about the opposing views that the different political parties have on events, and think about what would happen if a president ordered a drone strike on someone who is a terrorist, but things go wrong. And instead of the terrorists being killed, a bunch of civilians are killed. Well, a new administration comes in from the opposite party who hates the former president, and they say, you know what? That drone strike was unjustified. I want you to prosecute the former president for murder. In these days, I could easily see that happening.
Hans von Spakovsky with us right now. I want to make sure that we cover all of our bases here, and we're watching as Donald Trump has been everything's been thrown at him, whether it sticks or whether it doesn't stick. That this constant conversation is very politically based, and the arena that the political conversation happens to be happening in is a courtroom. The one thing that I continue to see come up as we are having this discussion, and especially the January 6th and the accepting of the election or trying to overthrow the government and Donald Trump being responsible for it, is the idea of the fake electors. And I know that you've heard this conversation a lot. I know that you've heard that criticism of President Trump a lot. When people are talking about fake electors, what are they discussing that they're suggesting Donald Trump has done that is of criminal problem?
Well, they're claiming that setting up an alternate slate of electors was somehow a criminal act, and I would strongly dispute that. What Donald Trump was doing was setting up an alternate slate, contingent slate of electors in states, so that if state officials decided that the election in their state had been wrongly decided, that fraud had occurred, the alternate slate of electors would be there and available to conduct the vote by the December deadline where the electors have to vote. And the idea that that's somehow criminal, I think, is an abuse. And it certainly doesn't pay attention to our history because, for example, in 1960, there was a dispute in Hawaii between Richard Nixon and Kennedy. Nixon was declared the winner. Kennedy set up what? An alternative slate of electors in case there was a final decision saying that he had actually won. And in fact, that's what happened.
I want to read to you a listener comment right here from Edward. He says, when a slate of electors have already been certified by the state, it's not alternate electors at that point, it's fake electors. Is that a true statement?
They were said, no, he's got this wrong. If the state had determined that the election, let's say that the state said, oh, look, there was all this fraud in the election, the wrong individuals was declared the winner. The fact that folks were electors who were on the ballot wouldn't give them the right to vote because the state has just said, actually, you didn't win the election. So setting up an alternate slate of electors to be able to vote in case state election officials say the wrong person was declared the winner, that's not a crime.
I appreciate your answer. Thank you, Hans. There's always so much to talk to you about, and we're looking forward to seeing what develops in the Fani Willis situation, and we're going to get you back as soon as we can to talk about that because that seems to be materializing quite quickly. Do you think that Fani Willis and Nathan Wade are going to be toast?
If the judge follows the law and follows the evidence produced, the answer is yes. The question is, does he have the political courage to do so?
Capital I, capital F, if. We will wait and see.
Yes.
Hans, thank you. Love speaking with you.
Thanks for having me.
Talk to you soon.